everybody, and welcome to our fifth edition of the Zeldis Buzz podcast. My name is Amy Ray. I'm Managing Director at Zeldis Research, and today I want to talk a little bit about the trends that we're seeing in the group benefits business. Zeldis does a lot of work in group benefits, both on the medical side and quite a lot on the non-medical side, so those carriers that offer other ancillary benefits like life and disability, dental, even if they don't offer medical. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in that industry in case it'd be of interest to you all. We do, like I said, quite a lot of work here. We work with 7 or 8 carriers in this space, so we get to see kind of a really broad view of what folks are thinking about and talking about. So I want to start out by kind of talking about at a high level what we're seeing when it comes to research in this space and what's driving that research. So at the highest sort of thematic level, and this may be pretty true across a wide variety of industries, but in this space, there's a lot of, it's a crowded market. There's a lot of carriers here offering group benefits. And so what we're seeing is a lot of the research is being driven by how carriers can differentiate themselves. So struggling for differentiation or aiming for, I shouldn't say struggling, aiming for differentiation. So that means we're seeing a lot of testing, new ideas, new concepts, new products, new offerings. They might be entirely new benefits. They may be a spin on an existing benefit. They may be new tools and technology. Because another thing we're seeing in terms of differentiating is the carriers trying to make the life of the employer a little bit easier. So one of our biggest audiences in this space are benefits professionals at the employer level. And what we see is that this market, this position has become somewhat overwhelmed. They're wearing a lot of hats. They're doing a lot of different things. The job looks very different than it did 10 or 15 years ago. And so a lot of the research we're seeing is to try to understand where some of the pain points are so that carriers can deliver on reducing or eliminating those pain points, thereby differentiating by being easy to work with. And the other thing we're seeing in terms of differentiation is thought leadership. So a lot of the carriers we work with do some kind of publicly released thought leadership that they also use to help service brokers in this space, to help give them information about the industry and what's going on with their clients. And that's something we're seeing carriers do more and more. It's not just about delivering the products, it's about showing that you're a leader in the industry and that you have intelligence to provide when it comes to this space. And then sort of the other kind of high level theme is we're seeing a need for employer differentiation when it comes to benefits. So what we're seeing really since the pandemic is a tight job market and employers really looking to how they can attract and retain employees. Obviously, that's always been, or that always will be, a goal of sort of HR. But in recent years, that's become more difficult to do. The workforce, people's priorities have shifted. So employers are always looking for a new way to attract and retain, and they're looking for benefits where they can help with that, right? So not just necessarily offering the most basic benefits, but offering something above and beyond that will get an employee's attention, that will keep them at an employer, and that might get them to come to an employer. So those are like kind of at a high level, the big themes that we're seeing driving research. And I want to dive a little deeper into, so what is some of that manifesting? What are some of the specifics that we're seeing a lot of research on? The big one, the number one that I've probably seen the most research in this space in the last couple of years is leave. Leave. So by leave, those of you who aren't familiar, that could be someone goes out on disability, that could be family medical leave, maternity, paternity, parental leave. There's all different kinds of leave, right? And there's a lot of statutory leaves. So there's federally mandated leave only in the sense of protecting an individual's job if they have themselves have an issue or they have to care for a family member, there's certain qualifying things. But different states have different rules and guidelines. Some states have paid disability leave. Some states have paid family medical leave. So not just if the employee has a health issue, but if they have to care for a family member, or other qualifications. And it's like a patchwork across the US. And so as more and more employers, especially large employers, right, have employees in different states, but also even in today's world, even small and mid-sized employers with the virtual working environment are likely to have employees in different states. Our company, Zeldis Research, we're 19 employees, and I don't know, we're probably in 10 different states. So that just tells you even a company of my size has to think about this patchwork of legality when it comes to leave. So all that to be said, it's a challenging issue. It's always been a challenging issue, and it gets more and more challenging as more states pass different kinds of leave. And I will say, in my experience talking about leave for the last, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, and a lot in the last 5 years, what I have learned is no one is doing this perfectly. Employers are frustrated by working with carriers on their leave administration and handling all of the legality and compliance and the sort of patchwork, handling employees' claims, making it an easy process for both the employee and the employer. It's just not happening. And it's taking up a lot of employers' bandwidth. It's a huge, huge pain point. So it's something that we've seen a lot of research on in terms of, what are the challenges and pain points? What are some different offerings that could make that better? What are technologies that could make it better? As well as using leave, as I mentioned before, attracting and retaining employees. So using leave, different kinds of leave, unique kinds of leave as a way to attract and retain employees, right? So certain kinds of companies, certain industries, standard is you've got your paid time off, and you've got your parental leave, and you've got FMLA, maybe even paid family medical leave. Testing some different kinds, something on top of that, some unique offerings, as well as the potential of a paid family medical leave product. A few carriers are dipping their toe into that area. So just like you might have paid short-term disability insurance coverage, maybe having a similar product to that, but for family medical leave in states where you don't have it. All things that we're seeing. Another big thing that we're seeing as potential offerings, differentiators, are supplemental health products like accident, hospital indemnity, and critical illness. So really exploring the need for these products, perceptions of these products, how different segments of the workforce see these products, finding ways to communicate and explain these products, which sometimes can be confusing to employees, and testing potential new offerings in that space. Different similar products or ways of perhaps how they're being packaged or presented. That's something that we're seeing a lot of across all of the carriers that we work with, and just in the industry in general. And then another piece, again, in their efforts to attract and retain employees, what we're seeing is a lot of what we would call point solutions. So something that an employer is offering that's a very unique and specific service. It's not part of, necessarily medical. It's not part of another product, but maybe it's a specialized mental health offering, like a telehealth or a meditation, or maybe it's a specialized financial wellness offering, or something related to a specific health issue or fertility. All of these very specific offerings that could be very attractive to employees that are designed to try to make them feel like their employer cares about them. And so we're seeing more of that. We're seeing employers kind of look at that, and not just look at that. We talk to employers who might have lots of these point solutions with different vendors. But what we're seeing is that carriers are starting to look at partnerships with vendors as a way of offering some of these solutions to employers, so that you don't have to go out and find the vendor for each one. Perhaps your life and disability or your dental or your medical carrier are going to offer these point solutions as part of their offering. So something else where we're seeing a lot of discussion and work. Something that's kind of never goes away, is also always a big issue, and this hasn't changed, is employee education, communication, especially particularly around enrollment, but helping employees to understand their benefits and make the best decision when it comes to enrolling in their benefits. Always a challenge, right? So no matter how hard everyone tries, we consistently see that employees, when they actually have to take advantage of some of their benefits, they don't understand how it works. When they're trying to enroll and choose, for example, between medical plans, they struggle to understand all of the concepts and trade-offs that might be there. So, we see a lot of testing new channels of communication, new approaches, using videos, different what we call decision support tools to help people through the enrollment process. Enrollment that goes, or communication and education that goes beyond just enrollment and continues throughout the rest of the year. That's something that we see a lot of discussion around. And then just different roles in that education. So there are different perspectives on whether the employer should really take the responsibility and lead on that and wants control over that, versus if the employer wants the carrier or their broker to help with that part of the process. And I will say, from my perspective, I'm seeing a bit of a shift from where employers always wanted to kind of control that because these are their employees and they want to control how they're being communicated to. Now I'm hearing more of, we want some help here. We want carriers or brokers to be taking, doing a little bit more lift in this area. So that's something that we've seen a trend around. I mentioned, talking to employers and brokers, I mentioned that their jobs have gotten more difficult and trying to find ways to make their jobs easier. So we have seen an effort to really understand that, to understand the jobs to be done for employers and brokers, to understand where there are gaps, particular challenges and pain points, so that someone can come up with a solution. So that's becoming a need as well, that type of research. Technology has been important, I would say, for the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years, still very important. We see a lot in terms of portals, both from the carrier side, the employer's own internal portal, self-servicing for employees through claims processes, and very important data feeds, API integrations, right? So having systems talk to one another, having claim systems talk to Ben admin systems, talk to payroll, and that integration is something that has been extraordinarily challenging for employers, a huge pain point, a huge time suck, where they're trying to fix file feeds constantly, where data is incorrect or it's not working. Definitely been something that's driven carrier selection more and more. I do feel like we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I do feel like we're seeing employers report that this has gotten better with a lot of carriers, but there's still room there for it to get even better. I mentioned the whole issue with attracting and retaining employees and that being a big focus. I think part of that, we're seeing a lot of research trying to understand workforce and demographic changes in the workforce. There has been a shift. I talk to employers all the time in interviews, and they're really seeing a shift in priorities, in needs, in what employees are looking for, both culturally and in terms of, their benefits and compensation. Some of it's age-related, generation-related for sure. Some of it's not. Some of it's since the pandemic and the need for flexibility and work-life balance becoming more of a priority. But all of those things are important, and it all ties in together with benefits. Finally, we continue to see that this has been pretty consistent. Carriers looking to do a lot of brand and competitive assessment, understand what they're doing well, what they're not, what their competitors are doing well or not, understand their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the market, where there's white space. Again, it's all about that differentiation. It has become a much more crowded market, I would say, than it was when I started doing this 20 years ago. And over the course of time, there's just a lot of players in the space. Medical players, there've always been a bunch. Now there's a lot more non-medical players. People keep entering the space. So I think similar to what we see on the P&C side, which is also a really crowded insurance market, You see brokers quoting, 12 carriers when they're quoting group benefits business. So anything a carrier can do to differentiate is really the core of what folks are looking for. So I hope that this is valuable for those of you in the benefit space. I would love if anybody wants to reach out, follow up. Love having these conversations. Um, Love to hear your perspective and what you're doing, and whether or not it aligns with some of these things that I've been talking about. Um, but I appreciate you if you've listened to this point. Thank you for participating in our podcast series, and have a great day.